Hello, this is my presentation on emotional labor, and my next slide will basically explain why I chose this topic and a few details about emotional labor before we get into the full actual meaning of emotional labor, and I hope you enjoy. So, as our economy has shifted from traditional agricultural work to a significant growth in the service industry, the notion of emotional labor has emerged as a crucial aspect in the modern work life. So, it's become very relevant these days. Service providers often find themselves having to perform emotional labor, navigating frequent and intensive interactions with clients. So, this emphasizes the value of gaining knowledge on emotional labor, which is why I decided to choose this as my theme. Um, in this presentation, we'll explore the many aspects of emotional labor, examining its importance, drawbacks, and the links it holds with the frames of reference, radical, pluralist, and uniterist. And by learning about emotional labor, it will in turn uncover the complexities of human interactions and the impacts it can have on the psychological and professional development of the workers within the service industry. And on the side there, you can just see the images that I feel represent what emotional labor is. So it's basically masking your own feelings in a way, in order to fit what the organization wants from you. So just a quick introduction onto what actually is emotional labor. Um, Emotional labor was formed by the sociologist Arlie Hochschild, and she defined it as the management of feeling to create a publicly observable facial and bodily display. And there are two different types of emotional labor. So there's surface acting and deep acting. So surface acting is the process of altering your emotional expressions to adhere to organizational rules. Deep acting is the process of changing your own emotions to present the required emotional expressions. So examples of these that I put were police officer and nurse. So for the example of police officer, their job requires them to perform surface acting as they are expected to be remained in a professional matter, no matter how stressful the situation is. Um, this can sometimes lead to emotional dissonance. And then for nurses, nurses are also required to manage their emotions through both surface and deep acting in order to make their patients feel cared for throughout. And this also allows them to build resilience that they may deal with, that may help them deal with managing others' distress. So, as seen above with these two examples, emotional labor can be a very useful tool to allow employees to control their emotions in order to ensure customers' comfort. But it can also result in very negative effects such as employee exhaustion, emotional dissonance, stress, and also bad mental health. So this is an overview of the frames of reference. So for the unitarist frame of reference, managers and workers, they have a consensus of interests. So they may not hold the exact same interests, but they do align with each other. Therefore, they hold common objectives and values. And the conflict is viewed as due to a misunderstanding within the workplace. And they see power relationships as unproblematic, and usually tend to blame the conflict on the teamwork sense of it. And then the pluralism is where the interests and values differ between managers and workers. So due to this, managers actually they acknowledge the fact that conflict is inevitable and they're prepared to resolve this appropriately. And they resolve this conflict through things like trade unions. And the radicalist viewpoint believes that capitalism is inherently um, exploitive and workers are alienated from their work, so they never actually get to see the fruits of their own labor. And a key example of this, what they do is they place the workers in a production line in a set place. They never actually get to see the end product of their actual work. And they believe that the only way to resolve this conflict is through the complete abolishment of capitalism. So on this slide, I've come up with 3 different questions that relate to the link between the frames of reference and emotional labour. So for the first question, I put, is emotional labour seen as a form of exploitation within a radical frame of reference? And I answered this as emotional labour can be seen as a form of exploitation in the context of radical management, as employees are forced to manage their emotions through emotional labour in order to benefit the ones in power. Therefore, emotional labour can be seen as a tool that is used by powerful beings in the organisation to control and dominate workers. Secondly, I've basically made a table displaying the pros and cons of the unitarist, pluralist and radicalist approach, and I've also put them into the context of emotional labour. So firstly, there's the unitarist approach. So the advantages of this is that as they hold the same interests, they may have similarly to reliable customer experience and team cooperation. So in the context of emotional labour, because the managers and employees hold the same interests, this means that employees are probably more open and more willing to perform the required emotional labour in order to keep customers happy, because they both want the same thing. Disadvantages of this, however, is that it has been criticised for their power relationship. So, for example, in the context of emotional labour, managers may feel as though employees that want to express their own true emotions, they may view them as a threat to the growth of the business. For the pluralist approach, advantages of this is that it is very flexible. So in relation to emotional labour, these managers, they acknowledge the fact that they do have differing interests to the employees, which can lead to managers being more accommodating to emotional labour that the employee needs to perform. So they may allow them to, show their real emotions at times. Disadvantages of this is that there is conflict through miscommunication. So as managers and employees hold differing interests and values, this may lead to emotional labour being inconsistent, and some employees may choose to show their own emotions instead of the emotional labour, causing there to be an impact in the business. And then for radical management, it highlights any ethical issues, which is an advantage. So managers may highlight the emotional violations within the workplace, and they may advocate for equal rights that prioritize the well-being of the employees. A disadvantage of this, however, is that there may be disruption within the workplace due to this. So radical approaches may clash with the original norms of the organization, which may potentially cause disruption within the workplace and confusion as well as that. Thirdly, my third question is what groups in the workplace are particularly affected? And through researching, I found most of my research on women. So when it comes to the groups affected by these, I've put the women in the workplace often do face challenges due to fear of backlash. So they may feel compelled to suppress their own emotions. So they may feel the need to manage the need to express their true felt emotions. And additionally, emotions considered appropriate for women to display at work are typically determined by gender stereotypes. So this is in relation to the advantages of radical management at the bottom of the table. So managers may highlight these emotional violations, for example, the gender stereotypes of the emotions of women, and may advocate for the rights of this. And these factors have significant impact on women's experience with emotional labour, as it can affect them mentally and physically, in the way that they perform these acts. And just to finish off, this is just a reference list of all the information that I've gathered from to make this presentation. And thank you for listening in and watching.